Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. So for those of you who are interested in when a number comes up twice in a date, why? I don't know why I am. It preoccupies me, too. I do nothing about it, but I thought maybe I would mention to those of you who are into that sort of thing. And you'll win the lottery, and then you'll support the show with the winnings. So this all has some real logic to it. It's going great, by the way. Not that we need it, of course. This country is so rich now because of all the money falling out of the sky from the very strongly tariffs. Have you remembered that there were this whole tariff regime thing? Remember we were getting billions and billions of dollars every day? I'm not sure why we're cutting the budget so much, given all of the money that was falling out of the sky. But at least it paid for the brief war with Iran, which was totally successful. Donald Trump having a hell of a time answering questions from the media, mostly just by saying, you're wrong and you're terrible and you should probably be prosecuted for treason. Because they're pointing out, hey, the Pentagon, those guys say the attack didn't go as claimed. Yeah, some work remains to be done, I guess, is one way of putting it. But he keeps insisting, no, it was totally destroyed like an atomic bomb. I think he says, I don't want to compare it to, I don't want to reference Nagasaki and Hiroshima, but it was total destruction, not unlike that, except for the part where it's like that. Other than that, they're very much the same, I'm sure. But the news of the day, or the news chatter of the day, even though you could absolutely spend all day on everything else, and we have another hour in which we can do that, the big chatter today online, the New York City mayoral primary. It was just the primary, but in New York City, the mayoral primary is a big deal, especially when, the Republicans have put up Curtis Sliwa, right? So as Greg reminded us, I think I'd forgotten all about that until he reminded us on Monday. And then he told us what was going to happen Tuesday. Well, not necessarily who was going to win, although he gave us a pretty good indication of what people knew about that at that stage too. But he told us this primary was going to wind up and it was over with on Tuesday. And then he was going to come back on Wednesday and tell us what happened. And you probably already know because everybody's excited about it. But what you don't know is, I don't know. What do I not know? Greg, what do we not know about the primary?
The individual neighborhoods and how this particular block voted.
Yes. And when I mean block, they sometimes mean just a city block. Because there's a million people.
Sometimes we're talking about like the Hasidic and Haredi Jews in
those kind of blocks
in this area versus the Orthodox but not ultra-Orthodox in Williamsburg, which is a different group. And we'll talk about the difference between Williamsburg and Borough Park and where my grandmother lived and, all the important stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder if there's is there any sort of klezmer fanfare that I can find?
That is an idea. And if you can't find that, just get Benny Goodman.
Yeah, there's always that. And then, of course, the spinning newspaper. I'm going to search and see what it has in store for us here. Well, I don't think it's fanfare, but I don't know. Well, so if we want to cover those blocks of voters, we can kind of handle it this way.
That's perfect.
Yeah, we got about 16 seconds of it, but maybe that's a little too much in my view.
Yeah. But it's New York City, so it's okay.
Yeah. All right. There's also a Mediterranean restaurant. I don't think that's going to do it. But all right. Very
why
interesting.
Not? It'll work in Little Odessa, otherwise known as Brighton Beach.
Well, okay. Well, we could give that as a try.
Pizzuki, we're talking about Greece.
Yeah, diners. That part of the Mediterranean. I got you now. All right. Very cool. Okay. So this election happened, and everybody is very excited to talk about it, including people who are very angry.
Let's first start with a primer.
Oh.
On rank choice voting.
Oh, all right. Yes.
RCV.
What the effing F is... Yeah, I think we've certainly heard about it.
People voted without knowing what they were voting for, how it was going to work. But let me explain. And this is
who cares about that?
The much maligned, but actually performed marvelously New York City Board of Elections.
All right. Yes.
Okay, everybody expected we weren't going to know who was going to win till next year because the BOE is notoriously incompetent and staffed with cronies. But then again, that's New York City, and that has a lot to do with the entire big picture story about how can this guy actually govern in New York City? And the answer is nobody can, but that's not the point.
Oh.
So here's how it works.
That is a good point. Yes.
New York City will use ranked choice voting.
There
we go.
And they can't stop.
They can have a dance off and whoever musical chairs, right?
Yeah, all right. Well, I gotta look for other
ethnic sound. It's wonderful.
Yeah, maybe I'll listen in, and as you mention different blocks, I'll see if I can find something inappropriate and have fun with it. Yeah, okay.
But I'm going to ask you to play a Zohran Mamdani "I'm Running for Mayor" short video, which will capture a whole lot of that, which would be perfect to that kind of music. But in any case,
well, I'll play the music.
New York City will use ranked choice voting
yes.
for primary and special elections for the offices of mayor, public advocate, comptroller. Brad Lander's the comptroller, by the way, the money guy. Borough president, city council, due to an amendment in the city charter in 2019. So how are results tabulated? The first choice votes are counted. If a candidate receives more than 50%, election's over.
Okay.
That's not what happened.
All right. There were 100 of them.
Last night, Zohran Mamdani got 43.5% of the vote, and Andrew Cuomo got 36% of the vote. And I'll explain why that's a huge upset. Brad Lander, the comptroller, who cross-endorsed with Mamdani, and there was a wonderful interview with the two of them on Stephen Colbert that's online if you want to watch. Lander got 11, and everybody else they also ran.
Okay, so together they would have had 50.
If you get 50%, you're the winner. If you don't get 50%, your vote is counted the following way. At the end of each round, the last place candidate is eliminated.
All right.
Voters who chose the eliminated candidate now have their vote counted for the next choice.
Right. You get to rank people in order.
Right. So your third choice, your fourth choice, your fifth choice don't count for this. Your vote's counted for your second choice.
Right. Okay.
So if you voted for Brad Lander and then you did Mamdani as your second choice and Lander finished last, your vote would go to Mamdani.
Yes. It didn't happen, but okay.
And that process continues until there's only two candidates left. Candidate with most votes wins.
Okay.
That's how, in New York, ranked choice voting works. It doesn't work that way everywhere. Some people have different ways of doing it, and there's different methods you could use, but that's the New York City method.
Right. For instance, you could vote this way instead. Or you could vote this way. There's many different choices.
Many different ways to do it. But, the funny thing is, it's the same wedding.
Yeah.
It's just one's the bride side and one's the groom side. In any case,
I like it.
That's what happens. And then here's how the results started to run in. And this is what made it so much fun.
Okay.
It was expected that because Mamdani's voters are younger and excited about the possibility of, not having the old guard, that the early vote was going to favor Mamdani. The best analysts figured, look, if Mamdani gets 10% lead, 10-point lead in the early vote, that's good for him. And then Cuomo will spend the rest of the day catching up because what they call the outer boroughs, which is to say Staten Island, the Bronx, and parts of Queens that are closest to Long Island, are going to vote for Cuomo. They're older, single-family homes, Democratic Party stalwarts, black neighborhoods, middle-class neighborhoods are going to vote for Cuomo.
Okay.
Wealthier neighborhoods, younger voters, yuppies, Brooklyn, is going to vote for Mamdani. So the expectation was Mamdani wins the early vote, which is, maybe a third of the vote, and 2/3 that comes out on election day is going to favor Cuomo.
All right.
Actual results, Mamdani was up by about 8. 8.1, 8.2 after the early vote and the mail vote came in. Very small mail vote. And so it was okay. That's not outstanding, but good enough to keep him in the game. Let's see what happens. Yeah. And the expectation was that when the Cuomo vote starts coming in, Mamdani will probably lose that lead and be trailing at the end of Tuesday by 2 or 3 points. But as ranked choice voting eliminates the bottom people, those votes will probably go to him. So in the end, by next week, he wins by a percentage point or two. And that was the expectation, even after the early vote came in. And especially after the early vote came in, because he didn't hit his 10-point mark that everybody was looking for. But that's not what happened. Uh-oh. What happened is, as the same day vote, the election day vote comes in, Mamdani keeps his lead. It didn't drop at all. He fought Cuomo to a complete draw on election day. Nobody expected that. And as a result, the final from yesterday, not the final vote because we haven't done the ranked choice voting thing.
God. Yeah. All right.
Is Zohran Mamdani 43.5, Andrew Cuomo 36.
The 8. Same
and
8.
Then Mamdani's numbers are only going to go up because he's going to capture the RCV vote from the people who didn't make it. And Cuomo looked at this and said, I can't win, and he concedes.
All right. Well, I'm glad we got a concession out of him.
And that's why it was so exciting yesterday. It was not only not developing the way people thought, but it was developing in the way that favored the younger, more dynamic candidate. And for people like me who are ABC, anybody but Cuomo, that was exciting.
All right.
Or you could step back and say, okay, let's look at it by the 5 boroughs. Brooklyn voted Mamdani by 17 points. Manhattan by 5 points. And I think I mentioned in the show on Monday, and if I didn't, I meant to, how goes Queens, so goes the election. Mamdani won Queens by 7. He won the parts closest to Manhattan. He lost the part closest to Long Island, and still won Queens.
All right.
The Bronx was Cuomo plus 18, and Staten Island was Cuomo plus 9.
Yeah.
Of course, Staten Island's only 3% of the votes, so that doesn't really matter.
Well, yeah, no help there, but okay. That part was as expected.
So it was a diverse, mixed picture, and then you go back and you look at the individual neighborhoods. I'll just give you a couple just because.
All right. We'll see if we have any music for them.
Remember, I was born in Brooklyn. I lived there for 6 years in Marine Park, where Joe Torre's from.
Okay. Right.
And just southwest of that is Sheepshead Bay. That's where the best restaurants are, seafood restaurants.
Okay.
Lundy's, Randazzo's in my day. And then to the southwest of that is Brighton Beach. Brighton Beach is famous because we talked about this on the show years ago. Michael Cohen and the taxi medallions.
Oh.
That's Brighton Beach stuff.
I see. Yeah,
otherwise known as Little Odessa. Because Brighton Beach, and to a lesser extent Sheepshead Bay, Russian and Ukrainian immigrants. Russian spoken in the restaurants.
I see. Oh.
Very, very ethnic. It's New York.
Yeah.
Okay. And they voted for Cuomo. My old neighborhood voted for Cuomo. But the neighborhood in Brooklyn, Brooklyn Heights, Cobble Hill, where my sister used to live, that voted for Mamdani. That's where the yuppies and up-and-comers are living. So you can go neighborhood by neighborhood and you get a very different picture than borough by borough. And the more you know the neighborhoods, the more you know what's going on. The thing about New York, and I've said this on the show before, when you live there, is your neighborhood is about 2 blocks, 2.5, 3 blocks.
Yeah.
It's where your apartment is. It's where, especially in Manhattan, it's where the grocery store is to go to. You know the person who runs the small business, Chinese laundry, and the fishmonger, and the butcher, and the tailor. You know the individual stores for about 2 or 3 blocks, and then after that, it's like a foreign country. You don't know anybody.
Okay.
And when you walk those blocks, you know the people. They say hello. It is a neighborhood. It's not, the big city, 8.5, 9 million people. Nobody knows everybody. That's not true at all. Each individual block
Only
is a
in other
neighborhood. That's
neighborhoods.
why going block by block, this block is different than that block. It's got a completely different mix of people, and they vote differently. And so trying to put together a coalition in New York takes a lot of work and a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I sent you a video of Zohran Mamdani's first announcement that he's running for mayor.
Okay.
And it took place in November of last year. Trump had won the election. Mamdani is an assemblyman, New York Assembly, not the Senate, but the House, the Assembly, local level. And he's representing Queens. And so he goes to talk to some of the working class folks that live in his district, but also goes to Fordham Road in the Bronx and talks to some of the folks there. Are you set up to play the video?
Yeah. All right. Let's see. I got to turn up the sound on it.
While you do that, let me just explain. The interesting parts about the video are talking to the New Yorkers. You get a real good sense of like who lives there. Yes, it is a campaign video, so it's very slick and put together. That in and of itself tells you something as well.
Okay.
And I will say overall, if you want to look at the big picture and get some lessons here, long form interviews like going on Stephen Colbert and short form videos like on TikTok are how you win elections these days. And at the same time, it shows Mamdani's power of persuasion, because this was a persuasion election. You had to persuade the different groups in New York to vote for you. That ain't easy. So are you ready to play the video?
Yes. Okay. Let's we'll roll it and you tell me if you need to stop.
Did you get a chance to vote on Tuesday?
I didn't vote.
And why did you not vote?
Because I don't believe in the system anymore.
And did you get a chance to vote on Tuesday?
Yes!
And who did you vote for?
Trump!
Trump. The $1 million question. Trump.
Trump.
Donald Trump. Well, actually, early voted. I voted for Trump.
Honestly, I didn't vote.
She voted for Trump.
I voted for Trump.
I voted for Trump.
Me too.
Before I voted Democrat. At this moment, I voted Donald Trump.
Hillside Avenue in Queens and Fordham Road in the Bronx are two areas that saw the biggest shift towards Trump in last week's election. Even more residents didn't vote at all.
They like Trump because they don't want the Palestinian, the brothers they killed. The war in Ukraine, the Democrats giving all the money and the war. This is no good.
The swing is because people want lower prices. They probably believe that Trump will give them that.
Market price or
Energy, gas.
La comida. Food.
Most of these people are working families. They're working 1 to 2, 3 jobs, and rent is expensive. Foods are going up, utility bills are up.
And that's your hope, to see a little bit more of an affordable life?
Absolutely. What Trump did in the first 4 years, Fordham Road saw something where Kamala couldn't do that.
There were young voters who didn't vote for her because of the genocide, and I wouldn't have voted for her if I did, but I did vote for her, obviously, because I have common sense.
Can you tell me a little bit more about why you didn't vote?
Since you're out here, Gaza, who should I vote? Either side will go ahead, send bombs from here to kill my brothers and sisters.
Palestine issue, and then other issue is like Russia and then Ukraine. He stopped that war. That's why I voted him.
You can't say.
This is very, very interesting. The number of people, one, that he found in New York City who were, I voted for Trump, and two, the number who, of course, say, well, I'm opposed to all of these wars. And as you know, he'll be stopping all of those wars. Oh, well. All right, keep rolling?
Yeah, keep rolling.
All right, it's pretty good.
You're a Democrat and stand for the genocide that's going on in Gaza, period.
Practically, I like Democrat. I like Democrat, but I don't like this. Gaza, a lot of people will die.
Have you voted for Democrats in the past?
I have.
And what would it take for you to vote for a Democrat in the future?
Being able to pay attention to the regular Americans and their economic needs.
They should make economics the forefront of their campaign.
People were not really feeling it in their pocket.
I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I voted against Trump also in the 2018 midterms. Insulting us, playing on our emotions. All they do is shame you, and they just want to use like glitzy campaigns, and they get celebrities. And
like, if you're speaking the things that people want to hear about, I don't care what color you are, I'll vote for you.
we have a mayor's race coming up next year, and if there was a candidate talking about freezing the rent, making buses free, making universal child care a reality, are those things that you'd support?
Absolutely. You'd have my vote all day.
We need child care that is affordable. Buses should be free. The hike in the Metro cards is like totally unaffordable.
So my name is Zohran Mamdani. I'm going to be running for mayor next year.
Wow.
Yes,
wow,
yes, sir.
Wow.
And I'm going to be running on that platform.
I'm going to vote for you. Your energy is...
Thank you. My energy is getting up to inflation.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, what a disappointment, though, to see all the people who were like, oh, yeah, I voted for Trump. And, of course,
it was notable at the time.
Yes.
People said, boy, this politician is actually going to talk to the people in the West
Did
Virginia
you get a chance
diocese.
to vote on
no,
Tuesday?
he's going to do it again. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It doesn't quite come through because you only get these little clips of things. Well, boy, your energy is through the roof. Is it? It's kind of standing there as far as I can see. But that's it. That's the role of an interview.
You can,
but being present to talk to people, that is something.
Yeah, and on the pundit roundup this morning on Daily Kos, the second video I posted is the 21-minute interview with Stephen Colbert, Brad Lander, and Mamdani. And it's really good, but it's 21 minutes, so we're not gonna put it
and
on
it's
the show.
like I have a feeling Mamdani will be okay with our playing his campaign video and not complain about that, whereas Stephen Colbert will say, well, now I have a commercial enterprise here, and you can't just steal 20 minutes of my show, so you should go watch it on your own.
Right, on YouTube, where it's easy to find.
Yeah.
So
feed that
all of that
operation.
is just absolutely fascinating. Mamdani is a great campaigner. He's very articulate. There's clips of him being on stage and attacked verbally by people who feel he's not supporting the Palestinians enough. He has mentioned that he doesn't have a problem with globalize the Intifada as a statement that's alarmed Jewish voters, but he was able to win enough of them over by, as Haaretz in Israel points out, covering his campaign, he's not anti-Semitic, but he does raise Jewish fears.
You need to explain that these days. Yes.
Yeah. And so the fact that he's not anti-Semitic won over Jewish voters, and the fact that he raised Jewish fears did not win over ultra-Orthodox Jewish voters.
I see.
And so that's why when you look at the individual neighborhoods, a very large Orthodox but not ultra-Orthodox Hasidic Haredi community in Williamsburg, Mamdani won that by 28 points, whereas other places in Brooklyn that are heavily ultra-Orthodox and vote as a block went for Cuomo.
Okay, and this is how it sounded. Just in case you were wondering. We have that sound effect. Okay.
So it's good.
So again, just
it was an absolutely fascinating look at the city, but also he's out there. Number one, he's young.
Yeah.
And number two, he's trying to get rid of a really bad candidate in Andrew Cuomo.
Yes, and of course,
the establishment Democrats went for Cuomo because establishment Democrats go for who they know.
Yes.
Thinking of the DNC race again, I like Ben, but I know Ken. So it's hard to beat that, and Mamdani beat that. And so the question is, what now? Well, Eric Adams, the current mayor, who I guess formerly is still a Democrat, but will be running as an independent because Democrats hate him, will run in the general election. Curtis Sliwa, the guy from the Guardian Angels,
worst hat in the
non-entity,
whole campaign,
is running on the Republican side. And the question's going to be, is this a Joe Lieberman for Connecticut kind of thing, where all the Republicans, instead of voting for Sliwa, will, as a block, vote for Eric Adams in order to stop Mamdani from winning? And the answer to that is, in theory, it doesn't matter because Democratic registration over Republican in New York City is like 9-1. And so it's not the same thing as running that race in Connecticut. and Lieberman was an incumbent and a known entity, and Adams is an incumbent and a known entity.
To the extent you can know him.
However,
yes,
Eric Adams was pardoned by Donald Trump so that Eric Adams would cooperate with ICE.
Right. That's
and Cuomo,
unpopular. Yes.
Who may or may not run as an independent after the spanking he got, he may not, is also in a similar situation whereby there's enough funny business about what Cuomo was doing, whether it's the deaths in the nursing homes or monetary questions, that the Department of Justice could go after him, hold this as a Damocles sword over Cuomo's head.
I see.
Trump pardons him, and then you have to cooperate with Trump if Andrew Cuomo becomes mayor. So there's a lot of Democrats looking at that and saying, I can't vote for either one of these guys. And that's why it's likely that given the fact that Mamdani is going to formally win the Democratic nomination next week, he's likely the next mayor, despite Eric Adams running, despite Andrew Cuomo may or may not run on, because you could run on a different line.
Sure, there's 100, apparently.
Working Families Party for Mamdani if he had lost, but he
Leisurely
probably wouldn't do it. Other, Conservative Party or other lines in New York that you can run on. It just seems to me that Mamdani's not a lock, but, he's the clear favorite to be the next mayor.
Yeah, I would say so. Now, it's an interesting point about Cuomo and the Trump administration trying to manipulate him. They will, of course, I assume that they'll attempt to manufacture a crime about Mamdani as well. But, I mean, it will be, A, a lot less hard to make it stick, I would imagine. And two, their reactions would be different. And he'll, I have less worry about him saying, well, all right, I'll knuckle under with him somehow, than for a player like Andrew Cuomo, who might also say, well, actually, you kind of have me dead to rights on the charge. It's not entirely trumped up.
Right. So after the break, I want to talk about some reaction to the...
All right. Was there any? I didn't hear.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, everybody. This is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com, secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show in the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. The coverage continues. People are continuing to chatter about the New York City mayoral primary. This is it, the primary, even. Yeah. It's very exciting.
So why were people so shocked by these results?
I don't know.
Partly because of what polling said.
Ah.
All of the different polls, good ones like Marist, and all of the pollsters basically said, well, Cuomo's going to have a 10 to 14 point lead, by the time this is all over.
Okay. I think
one
Nate Silver
pollster,
was
public
betting
policy polling said, no, actually, Mamdani's in the lead.
PPP.
Only one that got it right.
Oh. Hey, all right. Congratulations.
How did they get it right? Well, they wrote a little piece about it, and I think it's instructive to go through it a little bit.
Guess so.
Not too technical, don't worry.
Hooray.
Why PPP saw Mamdani's win coming? PPP saw the first place finish coming before anybody else did for one simple reason, they wrote. We polled the 2025 electorate instead of the 2021 electorate. Usually,
Okay.
when polling a primary election, pollsters start out with a list of voters who have participated in similar elections in the past. But it was clear in this election, Mamdani was building a movement that was going to bring a lot of people into the process that never voted in a city election before. I think I mentioned on Monday that the early vote was really skewing young, for example.
Yes, so they wouldn't have made it through the traditional likely voter screen.
Correct. So they threw the likely voter screen out.
All right, which you can do on certain days. Leave it out on the curb in New York City.
Yeah, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays.
Okay.
But alternate day, parking.
Right.
So we made a conscious decision not to require people we polled to have voted in 2021. If they said they're going to vote, that was good enough. And
you believe them? That's
tens
crazy.
of thousands of people voted in their first mayoral election this year. When we looked at our polling, we found that those who didn't vote in 2021 broke 63-18 for Mamdani. We included them in our poll. That's how we got it right.
That's I'm just thinking about it. It didn't come through during the campaign per se, but afterwards, after both Trump elections, their strategists insisted this is how they did it. That they went to people who aren't traditional voters and persuaded them sort of under the radar, and the traditional models said they're not coming, and then they did.
And you said the magic word. If you want to be Groucho Marx, say the magic word and win $100. You said persuasion.
Oh, I assure you it was an accident.
Persuasion
You've persuaded
is
me to
how
say
you
it.
win. How many times have I told you that?
It's seeping in. I guess I said that. All right. Congratulations to you for getting me to say that.
Good word, win $100.
All right.
Pollsters know that most of the time it's very hard to get young people to answer a poll, and you often have to wake them up. There was so much enthusiasm from young voters in our raw data. We found 37% of likely voters were under 45. Our poll correctly found a much different electorate than usually votes in a primary election. When all the final turnout numbers come in, it'll probably turn out we should have projected even a younger electorate than we did.
Wow.
We appreciate the opportunity to have partnered with other people, and we've been at this in a long time. But our poll showing Mamdani ahead qualifies as one of the biggest outliers that proved to be right in recent polling history. And other people have written, you know what, the polls really got this wrong. Well, they didn't.
Well, hopefully they'll get some nice features, people paying attention to that, rather than just simply saying, well, polls got it wrong, don't listen to pollsters anymore. Well, yeah, if one got it right, wouldn't you want to listen to that guy?
Yeah, and then the guy writing this says, P.S., I was so confident in our numbers, I wrote this last week.
All right. He should have bet money with Nate Silver, who was still out at the last minute, insisting. Yeah, all the betting markets have Cuomo running away with it.
Oh, you have to look at the betting markets. G. Elliott Morris was all over them for that.
Yeah.
Because the betting markets
how much money got
had Cuomo leading quota until the last hour of the election, when all of a sudden Mamdani has a 97% chance to win.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's how they don't care that they look like
are
idiots.
The reactive
that's
market.
Right.
They're not the predictive market. That's the point.
Yeah. Well, very interesting that that they do that, and I guess the market mechanism itself, the actual the website is not a person, and it doesn't feel ridiculous flip-flopping like that. But
I'm going to send you
that's good. All right.
Polymarket, one of the more active ones, so you could see what I'm talking about here.
They're acting. These active guys. Okay. I was interested also, as you were, I'm going to go look for this, as you were saying about younger voters and turning out early. And I thought you meant, well, and I guess we've used it two different ways. There's the early voting, like voting well before Election Day. But then you also meant early in the day of Election Day that they were showing up. And I was wondering about that because I was like, the young people I know
we don't know that because early in the day, you don't have, what boroughs are voting, but you don't have the districts. You don't know the demographics of like Brooklyn is voting, but I don't know where in Brooklyn they're voting. It depends.
Oh.
Are we talking about Brooklyn Heights, which is Mamdani area, or are we talking about Sheepshead Bay and Brighton Beach, which is Cuomo area?
Okay.
Queens is voting. Are we talking about Long Island City, which is Mamdani, or are we talking about the parts closer to Long Island? We're talking about Douglas Manor, which is Cuomo, so you don't know from the early vote during the day of Election Day yesterday.
Well, you don't have those results, yeah.
whether young people are voting and the older people are staying home because it's 102 degrees. You don't know that.
Yeah.
You know the early vote.
I just found that interesting.
Yeah.
About the actual hours of the day that people would be voting on or turning out on
here's what
election
happens
day.
in New York City. New York City is a working city.
Yes.
So you vote from 6 to 9 a.m. and then you vote from 6 to 9 p.m.
Yeah, that's true too. And I thought weather being a factor, although it still seems to be catching people by surprise that it was 100 degrees, you should be doing this early in the morning. And people know to go running in Central Park early in the morning.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so do your voting then too. What?
You do.
Oh.
And so during
smart.
the day you're at work anyway, or you're watching a movie because it's air conditioned or something, you know.
Mm-hmm. I see the poly market flip here, but really that only happens at the end.
Most accurate. We predict 99%, so Mamdani wins, but that's only in the last hour.
Yeah, that's a little bit like the Tesla computers turning the automatic pilot off in the last microsecond before a crash. Yeah. We weren't driving. That was
until the election started with early vote. This had a 75 to 80% chance of Cuomo winning.
Yeah.
And then day of election, flips.
It does. I see it. It inches down as people begin going, and there's that moment where there's some serious possibility of a challenge.
Well, the PPP poll came out and said that Mamdani's ahead, and all of a sudden Mamdani's ahead on poly market. And then they said, nah, it's probably an outlier. And they go back to Cuomo, and then the vote starts rolling in, and all of a sudden, if
you placed your
polls
bet
close at
9
9 o'clock, at 9:02, you get the early vote results with mail. And then over the next couple of hours, you start to see the same day vote coming in, the election day vote, and you're expecting Cuomo to start making up ground, and he's not making up ground. And one of my Republican pollster friends, I mean, somebody I talk to all the time, and I actually put him in the pundit roundup, John Coughlin from Wynwood JMC. He's a Louisiana pollster, Republican pollster, and he was the first one that made the call. And said, I'm not seeing Cuomo's numbers here. I'm calling it now.
Oh.
And
but
he
only
writes,
on election day.
Unless I see rapid closing, this was at 9:26 p.m. yesterday. Unless I see rapid closing, I'm about to call this race. But keep in mind, 2/3 of the total vote reported in so far is early vote. Problem for Cuomo is I'm not seeing any strong election day vote anywhere, even in the Bronx.
Too hot.
And turned out he was right.
Okay. But only at the last minute when there was nothing you could do about it.
And at this point, it's the polls close at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, and you have to have the picture. The polls close at 9 o'clock. 9:02, we get the and maybe that's an exaggeration. Maybe it was 9:04. We get the early vote dump, the mail vote dump, and Mamdani's up by 8.1, 8.2.
Okay.
We're expecting Cuomo to come in and start cutting into that. So
that's what you think.
Coughlin writes, E-Day votes are breaking 75,000, 66,000 for Mamdani. That's 8.1 for Mamdani. So Cuomo's not making that up anywhere. And that's why he goes on like 20 minutes later to say, I'm about to call this race because we're not seeing it close. Mamdani's in the lead. He's going to win.
Ta-da.
And he did.
All right. Well, exciting. We go forward now, and the coalition builder candidate now has some more work ahead of him. But
so here's David Day and D-Day from the old Daily Kos. It'll be tempting to analogize from one idiosyncratic municipal election that the old guard of the Democratic establishment has been wholly discredited and should be dismantled to make way for new leadership.
A lot of people would like that to be the...
It's really tempting to say that, he says.
Yeah.
But it's also correct.
Oh, well, no wonder he wants to say it then.
Right.
I mean, it's certainly a major theme Whether or not everyone will adopt the same tactics, or whether or not it's a replicable thing, if you're not a talented politician, you can't just be like,
exactly
hey,
right. You have to have
Zohran's
a talent to be able to pull it off.
Yeah. Now there are talented people everywhere. They're not always the nominee, but you've got to pull the talent wherever you are. It may be you. Why aren't you running? What's wrong with you?
So this is Mike Madrid, who's
Mike.
writing the day of the election. The election results in New York City are looking like the polls aren't picking up intensity. The pundits missed it again. Wow. Democrats want to flip tables over as much as Republicans did in the Tea Party days.
Oh.
One of the interesting things to look at is how working class black and brown residents voted. If these voters break left after moving towards Trump, there's a lot of water thrown on the racial realignment narrative. These voters are becoming more populist. They're not becoming more conservative. Voters are absolutely sick and tired of establishment politics. It's not ideological, and that's what the parties, pollsters, and politicians are missing. Go back to that tape I played you of Zohran campaigning Fordham Road and in Queens.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not. It's clearly labeled, but as I was listening to it, to me, I'm like, this is not clear to me at all that he's campaigning. He's just talking, which I guess is what people liked about it so much.
Yes, he is genuine. He's got that, I hear your pain, Bill Clinton effect,
Yeah.
And he's good at it.
He's got restraint.
So that's a lot of what happened.
Like, he has a very large microphone, and if my doing those interviews, all those people, who did you vote for? Trump. I guess I would probably wrap him over the forehead with the. Yeah.
Right,
what's wrong with you?
That's not what he did.
No, he's very calm and collected and a rational person.
All right, here's the New York Times. 5 takeaways from the New York City mayoral primary.
Please, take them all.
Seismic upset, they say. The state assemblyman who campaigned relentlessly against New York's spiraling affordability crisis was on the verge of a seismic upset in the Democratic primary on Tuesday, powered by a diverse coalition from Brownstone, Brooklyn to the immigrant enclaves of Queens. And the results aren't final, but he declared victory and Cuomo conceded.
Yes. Now, are the buses going to be free?
No.
Okay.
Daycare won't be free either, but he didn't say free daycare. He said
that's
affordable.
True. Buses, he said free. I mean, it's doable.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen.
No, I don't think so either, but okay. But, lower prices or just not going to go up would probably be popular enough.
So this is an unapologetically progressive economic platform, ambitious, memorable, and he also said he wants to freeze the rent on rent-stabilized apartments, all financed by a large tax hike on the city's wealthiest residents.
All right, I'm not them. Yeah, get those guys.
And the Times writes his success also owed much to his exuberant style, which you saw in that or heard in that video. A stark contrast to Mr. Cuomo's joyless campaign, which featured heavily staged events and a candidate who repeatedly warned voters that the city was in deep trouble only he could fix.
Oh boy,
I watched Cuomo's stuff.
Yeah,
as opposed to Mamdani stuff. You know who I thought of?
No.
Jeb Bush. Clap.
Oh, please clap. Yeah, I guess in a way. I mean, also, that actually brought back to mind the dynasty thing. Like, how long have we been dealing with these Cuomos? Enough already. Same with the Bushes.
Now, in terms of what Mike Madrid was saying, here's the Times. Mr. Mamdani, who would be the first Muslim and South Asian mayor,
both,
was also the top vote getter in predominantly Asian and Latino communities in Queens.
All right.
Woodside, Jackson Heights, Sunnyside, Richmond Hill, home to a large South Asian population. Some of these were Trump voters.
Yeah, they were in the video.
Yeah. While Mr. Mamdani campaigned on helping working-class New Yorkers, he ran up large margins in the affluent brownstone-lined streets of Park Slope, Cobble Hill, Clinton Hill, and Brooklyn, and Manhattan enclaves like the East Village and swaths of Midtown, whereas Cuomo won the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side, the old money.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, Mamdani struggled more in middle-class, predominantly black areas in the Bronx and Southeast Queens, where Cuomo retained strong support from his years as governor, and he won islands of support Cuomo did on affluent Democratic strongholds like the Upper West and the Upper East Side, and in Orthodox Jewish enclaves in Brooklyn, where Mr. Mamdani's views on Israel alienated some voters. We
Sure.
haven't spent a lot of time talking about Mamdani and Jewish voters. We mentioned it because of his Intifada remarks and the fact that he's a Muslim. And it's New York, and ethnic politics, matter in New York.
Yes.
But I want to give you, and this is unfortunately behind the paywall.
Oh dear.
A piece from Haaretz in Israel.
Okay.
Talking about why Zohran Mamdani's candidacy for New York City mayor terrifies the pro-Israel establishment.
Okay.
If the claims of anti-Semitism against Zohran Mamdani, a Democratic mayoral candidate, are obviously mendacious, which is to say they're made up and they're lying, he is not anti-Semitic, the fears of those pushing those ideas are not. And let's talk about what they fear. There's close to 1 million Jews living in the 5 boroughs of New York City. As Colbert pointed out, only Tel Aviv as a city has more Jews living than New York City.
Oh. Huh.
So it's no shock that anti-Semitism is an important issue in the surprisingly competitive Democratic primary for mayor. All the Democratic candidates have or claim to have plans to protect the city's Jewish community from violent hate crimes, which have increased over the last several months. It's equally unsurprising that the candidate facing the most intense scrutiny is Zohran Mamdani, a 33-year-old member of the state legislature who's captured the yearnings and anxieties of the city's young people struggling to plant roots in the city. He's a Democratic socialist, and he'd be the city's first Muslim mayor. There is no evidence Mamdani has expressed an anti-Semitic sentiment in his life, says the Israeli columnist writing this. But of course, anti-Semitism isn't really the issue. Worries about diminishing support for Israel are being misarticulated through the idiom of anti-Semitism. And that's an important thing. You see that with Netanyahu all the time. If you don't support me, you're anti-Semitic. Well, bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, there's millions of people in Israel who vote against you. Sorry, they're not anti-Semitic. It's all right. That's not what's happening here. Okay, and similarly, we should. I think we're all getting the hang of it by now. But of course, everybody falls back on that, and a lot of times it's Republicans looking to sow division.
Yeah.
But it's increasing. I think there's fewer and fewer people that they can reach with that who haven't already heard by now. If you were concerned about anti-Semitism up to this point, I've heard what you're trying to do, and it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Thank you. We'll figure out who's anti-Semitic if we're worried about that.
So in this Haaretz piece is actually a tweet about him being interrupted by a protester, and they're angry at him for saying Israel has a right to exist.
Angry at Mamdani for having said that? Oh, yes. Oh, okay.
And a Palestinian stands up during this tirade and starts to defend him. It's fascinating.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a dynamic for you.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is
people?
I don't have any concern about Mamdani being anti-Semitic.
No, I don't.
I don't think that's the issue.
Yeah.
Is he sensitive enough to fears that he's handling it properly? We'll see, but so far, yes.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like a sensible enough guy. I mean, he's not from nowhere. He's in the assembly.
Right. And so this is where I think the best evidence we have about where he stands in all of this is to watch that 21-minute Stephen Colbert interview with Brad Lander.
But wait an hour before
the Jewish comptroller.
Okay. Yeah,
right.
who was
and they're great
recently in the news.
It's a terrific interview.
All right. Yeah, interesting, too, that this is another interesting thing. And something I really like about the ranked choice voting effect here is it takes away one of the things I used to hate the most about Democratic primaries. Is like, well, I like this guy and I'm interested in that guy. And there are people I don't like, but I don't like to see the two people that I like having to attack one another in order to come in first. So you don't have to in this sort of election. And like you were mentioning, something that most of the country is still not really familiar with, this cross-endorsing idea. And then it gives you the opportunity to say, he's actually would be a pretty good candidate as mayor. I mean, I think I'd be better, but he'd have my back and I'd have his, and that's okay. And you don't have to agonize over your choice too much. You can put us both down as getting your vote.
Right.
And it means something. Second choice mayor. It used to not mean anything. That's your second choice. That's nice, dear. You only get one choice. So, maybe complicated, but I think people will begin to understand it. Although I did see a couple of interviews where people are like, I couldn't really make up my mind, so I ranked everybody, more or less. And I mean, I guess they intended for you to do that originally, but if you actually don't want someone to be mayor, don't put any number near their head.
Right. And really, but as it turns out, you're not really screwing things up because the way New York City does it is really only your first and second choices matter.
So if we get down to where your third and fourth choices matter, then things were really tight, I guess. But not
now.
Usually
The Atlantic had a piece by Annie Lowry on June 12th.
Well, good for them.
Andrew Cuomo is in an improbably close race with Zohran Mamdani, but New York's ranked choice voting system has warped the political calculus of the mayoral campaign. And Grace Mineta wrote yesterday, as it turns out, no, it didn't.
Oh, okay. What did she think was
choice
warped?
Is confusing. Not really. Mamdani would have beat Cuomo either way, but because of ranked choice voting, he'll do it with a majority and not a 43% plurality. That's the only thing it's going to mean in the end. And that's interesting because he can claim a mandate because he's got more than 50% of the vote.
Yeah, that's another good thing about it in the end, right? It would have looked, that is interesting and a good point. It would have won, he would have won anyway. Well, it will warp the outcome. Well, no, it will make the outcome, I think, it will give it more legitimacy. We asked people, well, what about your second choice? If you want, okay. And we took them into account, and guess what? There's still more people wanted Mamdani. I'm sorry. Cuomo,
another
guys.
point from an observer. The counterpoint is that RCV, ranked choice voting, forces candidates to build coalitions. So Lander and Mamdani built one, and they understood the assignment, and the other guy failed at tearing everybody down and didn't try to team up with anybody.
Didn't think he had to.
And
he's old school,
because when you're far ahead,
so
you don't
was
have
his campaign. Yeah, I guess that's true too. And now also I see a lot of speculation. Well, what will Lander be doing next? And
Lander's going to run for one of the House seats that's open, probably.
Well, I did see people mentioning that, and then I saw other people saying, well, maybe he'll be a part of the Mamdani administration or a deputy mayor slot or something. I don't know. The dynamics of New York City are different from most places because it's such a gigantic city. Being a deputy mayor is actually a thing, and it's a big deal. So maybe, whereas, I don't know, in Peoria, well, you could be deputy mayor. Well, no thanks. There's no job there. But yeah, I don't know how it's going to go. It'll be very interesting to see how it works out. And I don't know who's the more outlandish speculation. But Lander's got something to do coming up next, and we'll see which one it is. But certainly, if there's congressional contests available, that ain't a bad choice. I'd like to see him get involved and stay involved and raise his profile too. I don't know. We'll ask him. I'll call him now. Hold on a second.
I just think it's all fascinating. So that's there's other stuff to talk about. Trump's bombing of Iran was a big failure, and the public understands that, and they don't trust him. And his poll numbers were not moved by it. As a matter of fact, it turns out Harry Enton had this. At least initially, Americans overall gave the U.S. airstrikes 2 thumbs down. CNN -12, Ipsos -9. This is 70 points worse than the net approval for the airstrikes on ISIS in 2014, which had a +58 net approval.
That's when people thought, the news said they worked, and they still gave the thumbs down.
People thought that for the most part during crises, the American president tells the truth. Not true anymore.
That's cute, guys.
Yeah, isn't that adorable? But that's not how the world works.
No, certainly not anymore if it ever did. But yeah, it was underwater when people thought it worked. The fact that it didn't work, it's a little disconcerting, of course. This is how bad, and the ill effects of having Trump in office is you have Americans running around saying, well, good, it didn't work. Well, I didn't want Trump to have a win or anything, but I think in general principle here, if you're going after a program that you haven't even an inkling will lead to a nuclear weapon, I don't think it's a smart idea necessarily to react this way, but if you're going to react this way, you better wipe that stuff out.
Yep.
And
so Phillips O'Brien, the military expert, says, here's how the U.S. air campaign went.
Okay.
1, Trump doesn't want to get involved. 2, he's told Israel has lots of success. 3, he becomes desperate to join so he can be seen to kick ass. 4, he bombs Iran one night. 5, results of the bombing, not so good.
Yeah. There would be more work involved in something like this. Right. The most fascinating aspect of this was when he started to tell reporters, actually, the Israel thing was me. I did that.
And then he gets mad at Israel and Iran for, quote, breaking the ceasefire because the campaign was really about him and his personal glory. He desperately wants the Nobel Strategic Pause Prize.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
And he wasn't getting it because they weren't cooperating it, so he started cursing him out live.
Give me the goddamn Peace Prize, you bastards.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much. And so you look at that and say, well, I wonder why this wasn't popular with the Americans. Why didn't it get a plus 58? I don't get it.
I don't know. Let me just tell you, if you don't give me the Peace Prize, I'm going to kill you. Well, that's a bad way in. But these things have worked.
And the last thing I'll say, because we don't have time for it on the show today, maybe we'll talk about it a little tomorrow.
You could stay, but no.
The abundance discussion.
Oh, yeah.
That Democrats are having on and offline. What does that mean with a win by Zohran Mamdani?
Oh, yeah. Good question.
Well, Mamdani actually went on and discussed some of this.
Good, because I don't remember what abundance means.
Yeah. And so, I think that's a good discussion to have for tomorrow.
Okay.
For those of you who want a reading assignment, I have Noah Smith, which is Zohran Mamdani's policies will mostly not bring abundance to New York City. Derek Thompson, The Future of Abundance and the Left.
Is it good, though?
So what does that all mean? And so it's a good discussion.
I think so. I just, like 2 weeks ago, finally said, what is this abundance thing anyway? And you helped me define it, and it's out of my head already. And so I want to catch back up
Less
on
regulation to building things.
Okay, great. I guess so. Unless they're the things, poor people want. Maybe then.
Regulations.
All right.
Meanwhile, Trump's approval in Gallup, lowest of his second term, disapproved 57, approved 40. So, no, he's not popular. And thanks for all of this, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, very good. And it was a lot about the mayoral race. That's what was promised. Thanks, Greg. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see if that still tops.
Mm-hmm.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Hey, a report crossing the transom at the moment that I saw this yesterday, and I didn't really pay much attention to it just because I was like, in the grand scheme of things with everything that's effed up in so many different ways, this wasn't a huge issue, but this keeps cropping up, and it is important. And where is this building? I don't know. Okay. The department... Well, I'll start with the National Science Foundation. As you know, involves science. You probably did know that. And therefore is disfavored in the Trump administration, the Trump era generally. Science. Thumbs down to science. But they have or had, and that's the issue, a very lovely building are they in Alexandria? Yeah. And, okay, science is disfavored, and they're, the dodgy people slashed the hell out of the National Science everything. And so it has, I guess, created this vacuum where there was at one point, you'll remember that I guess when dodgy thought they might stick around and be a permanent thing, and Elon might stick around and be a permanent thing, even though, he was statutorily limited in his tenure. But that he had, it was speculated he was seizing the U.S. Institute of Peace because they had this beautiful building in D.C. and that he might somehow just grab it and make it his own headquarters in D.C. And that sort of flopped for various reasons, including the law. But anyway, and remember, by the way, that these Trumpy conservatives are, otherwise all about property law, but, except to the extent that you have property that they want, in which case, well, I'll take it from you. I'm anti-property law at that point, and then when I get it in my possession, then I am strongly for enforcing property law in possession. But anyway, the National Science Foundation's lovely building on Eisenhower Avenue in Alexandria, and if you take a look, you'll see it's an attractive enough building. And apparently, the Department of Housing and Urban Development has decided, under HUD Secretary Scott Turner, with the cooperation of fleece vest guy, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, who's still there, as it turns out. Everybody has forgotten about him and his vest, but he's still there making problems. Every once in a while, he gets the opportunity to do something staunchly pro-Trump and then remind everybody, one, that he still exists, and two, that he really isn't any kind of a moderate despite the vest. That was all a ruse. Anyway, the two of them somehow working together to say, well, what if we boot the National Science Foundation, slashed as it has been, out of its beautiful building in Alexandria and give it to Scott Turner and the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Alexandria is not so far from D.C., of course, that's problematic distance-wise, but HUD has a headquarters, and it is in Washington, D.C., and it's a cabinet department, and, come on, why don't you keep the operations downtown? On the other hand, of course, the Department of Defense is located outside of D.C. as well, in the Pentagon, so it's not unprecedented, certainly. But I guess what's unprecedented is saying, well, there's not a vacancy in this building. Well, why don't we slash the hell out of the agency that's there and then boot them out of it and move in? And it's, I don't know, maybe it portends poorly, just generally speaking, if the Department of Housing and Urban Development, who you would be looking to for, I don't know, like I would say probably developing housing and urban areas, and making sure that there's new development there and room for everybody who needs room, and their approach to housing themselves is, I am going to grab your house and kick you out of it, and then we'll move into it. That, I don't know if that's the example you want to be setting, but it's an interesting development and just very indicative of the Trump era in general. And so I just happened to see, because Carolyn Fiddler was posting about it, and, quite correctly. And then, by the way, so Karen Fiddler was posting about it, and then Jamel Bowie said, hey, everybody should see this. Here she first grabs this story from AlexandriaNow.com about this situation, and writes, Trump's HUD Secretary Scott Turner has made specific requests for accommodation in the building. It's not just, well, we need a new headquarters. Ours is an aging headquarters. And it is, no doubt about that. But, I mean, for the Department of Housing and Urban Development to not say, well, why don't we redevelop where we are and improve it for ourselves? Instead, we'll, knock somebody over the head, kick them out of their house and take theirs. That's just not agenda setting for HUD. But anyway, in addition to just being covetous of a nicer building but not being willing to do the work to improve your building, he also basically, I guess, sounds like he toured this spot. Somebody suggested this to him, and then he was like, hey, nice digs, nice offices, like for me. I'll get some swanky executive suite here. I'm into it. Does this make any sense to move the department? No. But having this cool penthouse apartment essentially to myself, that might be something I'm into. So Turner, it says, has made specific requests for accommodations in the building. These include a dedicated executive suite on the 19th floor, but that's not enough. They're going to redevelop it. After all, they're going to refurbish it. They're just not going to refurbish the building he doesn't like, because there's also on tab here, and this is important for the nation, the construction of an executive dining room. And now this was to be expected to some extent, like he'll have a dedicated parking space. I would say that seems normal enough, right? You're the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. You're moving into a new building. I would say probably in the parking garage. Yes, there should be a little spot there reserved for the cabinet level secretary, right? But he's not driving himself, of course. And in addition to not driving himself, he's also got the expansive glorification of service in the Trump thing. There's a fleet of cars. So there now will be parking space for 5 cars reserved for him. And although I'd like to read the article now, I'm not certain whether that's is that Secret Service type escorts, security escorts for him wherever he goes, or is he saying I have a problem. I'm a billionaire. I own 5 cars. I can't park them all at my house. I need to be able to park some of them at work. Can we make that happen? I'll put my Lamborghini at work. I don't know, but we'll find out. But this is, like Trump, like Elon Musk, etc. These guys are just sort of refurbishing things to their own taste. And is there any reason why the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, needs an executive dining room? Probably not. Some of the old school places have got those in the older buildings. And back in the olden days, they had that. And, the secretaries would, in fact, be dining in and have, there was wait staff, service staff whose job it was to serve the tea and whatnot and the luncheon to the secretary. But we've kind of put that behind us, you would have thought, right? But not with billionaires. And, of course, Trump has an executive dining room, so he wants to have an executive dining room, too. Now, Carolyn also adds, if a Democratic appointee indulged in this level of self-serving decadence, we'd never hear the end of it. And I feel like we should be hearing a lot more about this. And she's absolutely right. Even Jamel Bowie thinks so. I don't know why that would be surprising. Of course he would think so. But, I don't know. Made it sound more dramatic if I express it that way. So what do they have in the report from Alexandria Now? National Science Foundation headquarters to be taken over by HUD, displacing 1,800 plus employees. They haven't been cut to the bone just yet. There's 1,800 people report to work there as part of the National Science Foundation. And they now say, no, you don't. Where are they going to put them? Well, I don't know. I don't think they actually have a plan for this. But they didn't have a plan for where to put the National Guard troops in California either, so not that surprising. So the number 1,800 plus is 1,833 NSF employees currently work in this building, and next week get the F out of here. Who's helping? We told you, of course, about Secretary Scott Turner, who covets the plush office suite, but it's not plush enough. They got to have a dining room for him. And Glenn Youngkin is helping in between, I guess, establishing Virginia as a world-class business location or something, or whatever it was he said he was being elected to do. Well, they reportedly plan to announce the takeover today, Wednesday, June 25th, according to information provided to journalist Dan Garisto by multiple NSF staff members. The transition will occur over the next 2 years. So, I mean, I don't know. Scott Turner could fall down a set of stairs somewhere in between the next 2 years and never realize the dream of having an executive dining room. But whatever. There is no planning for NSF, no identified future location, no appropriation for a new building or a move, according to an NSF staffer who spoke to Garisto. The American Federation of Government Employees, Local 3403, they are unionized folks, which represents NSF workers, confirms that the takeover in an official statement released Tuesday. The union says it received notice Tuesday afternoon about the planned announcement. Turner has made specific requests, as we know, in addition to the construction of the executive dining room on the 19th floor suite, 5 parking spaces reserved for him. The HUD, and that's not the most outlandish thing about it. The executive dining room, I think, should, pique your interest. The HUD secretary also requests exclusive use of one elevator and space on the 18th floor to host his executive assistants. So the 19th floor is so he can run around nude, I guess, all day. And nobody's allowed on that. But I have an executive suite there. Plus, we don't have enough plushiness. We're going to build a new dining room. And people have to bring them food in blindfolded, so I don't have to wear any clothes. I don't think that's actually part of the plan. All the assistants will be one floor down, and they can choose to take the stairs between the 18th and 19th floor. But there will be now one elevator that only Scott Turner goes in. So again, he can be completely nude, riding up and down to his 5 cars. That's a little much, too. Why do you get your own elevator? I don't know. I don't want to talk to people. All right, what else? The HUD secretary also requests exclusive use of one elevator and the 18th floor space. Plans potentially include, this is another thing here, is the dining room enough? No, it's not, but here's my problem next. What if I eat too much in the dining room? I don't know. Where are you going with this? I want a gym in there. Now, that's also a modern amenity that a lot of places have, but I want a gym for me and my family. They should all work out there. Everybody in this cabinet is a billionaire. Join a gym. Build a gym, but not there. Build a private gym. Open a Planet Fitness franchise next to NSF headquarters that you're stealing, and work out there. No, there needs to be a taxpayer-paid gym for me and my family because reasons. Neither NSF management nor OSTP. I haven't caught up on that acronym, have been involved, and the decision was instead driven by the HUD Secretary, Scott Turner, who will be imminently taking over the 18th and 19th floors of the soon-to-be former NSF building, Garisto reports. Where does Garisto do his reporting? There's a link up here. It's a link to his Blue Sky profile. I'll open that, and maybe that profile will tell us where he does his reporting. Science journalist, that's what it says. And then tells me nothing. But an independent science journalist, so that's good enough. That's a better, doesn't tell me where he gets published, but tells me who he is. So wow, interesting. Jim, the union local says no details, briefings about any relocation plan, expressing concern about the lack of communication and planning for displaced employees. Yes, I don't know how soon they'll be displaced if the transition takes over 2 years. And maybe that's what passes for a plan here. Well, it's going to take us a while to do this. So, I don't know. We got 2 years to make that decision. While Secretary Turner and his staff are busy enjoying private dining and a custom gym, NSF employees are being displaced with no plan, no communication, and no respect, the union states. The union criticizes the timing of the takeover, noting that it comes after the administration cut NSF's budget, staff, and science grants while forcing employees back into office work. That's interesting, too. You have to return to the office. All right, fine. We will. All right, but also, this is not your office. Okay, so where do you want us to go? I don't know. But wherever wherever we put you, we need you to return there immediately and keep returning. Okay. I have a feeling, too, by the way, this 2-year transition will involve a lot of go back to working from home, which, at least you'll have that. But then when they find out, all right, well, we finally found a roach motel for you guys to live in, you have to return to that instead. It's a little crazy. So there you go. And then, of course, the commentary. At a time when they claim to be cutting government waste, it is unbelievable that government funding is being redirected to build a palace-like office for the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. The union states, guess what? They think it's hypocritical. They describe it as a let-them-eat-cake approach to government. It is true. That is one. And it is truly dumbfounding. And that sounds quite correct. Garisto, who first reported the news on social media platform Blue Sky, they have the juice, clarifies his sourcing after questions arise about the credibility of the information. But I think it should all be cleared up at some point today. Now, that's a meta story, I guess, and all this, the credibility of his information. But the takeover itself represents a significant disruption for the National Science Foundation, which, as you may have guessed, funds scientific research across the United States. But to hell with that. The agency's employees have already experienced recent changes, including budget cuts, mandatory return to office policies, and then a mandatory get the hell out of your office policy soon to follow. An NSF employee who wrote to ALX, Alexandria, now on the condition of anonymity, provided the following additional background on Tuesday night, attributing it to, quote, NSF staff. And let's see. I will note that just yesterday, OSTP Director Kratsios, I'm lost, participated in a massive press conference announcing the first images of the NSF DOE. I guess they were going to share a building, Department of Energy, Vera C. Rubin telescope. Share a telescope, not a building. A state-of-the-art facility that will provide high-res movies of the night sky Ooh, movies. Enabling identification of asteroids with potential for collision with Earth, which we're now rooting for, I think. Enhanced understanding of dark matter and open up a wealth of opportunity for discovery about our universe, if that matters to anyone, which has already cost $541 million taxpayer dollars and will require ongoing operations and maintenance funds over its lifespan. How did we get to this? This is, of course, if NSF continues to exist, if the displacement results in or is the result of plans to dismantle the agency, that $540 million is a sunk cost in a decaying telescope. Oh boy. Any disruption in NSF operations as a result of the seemingly imminent takeover will impact the millions of dollars granted to universities. Screw them. Businesses, they might like that. And nonprofits, boo. Across the country, including in rural areas where Trump voters live, but never mind that to date have supported countless Nobel Prize winners, even though the only one who should count is Trump, and innovations like PCR, oh boy, and some things I don't understand. PCR, CRISPR, CRISPR, that's an acronym. MRI, I know that one. Google, I've heard of them. The Internet, that one I'm familiar with. And 3D printing, GIS technology, kidney exchanges, educational efforts like the Magic School Bus and Nova. Okay. The first images of black holes. So suffice to say, lots of good things that are happening over at the National Science Foundation that might come to an end. Additionally, NSF employees, when asking about the presence of HUD leadership at NSF HQ at least 3 times recently, have continually been assured that no takeover would be occurring. That is, until this afternoon. The specific timeline for the 2-year transition remains unclear, as does the process for relocating NSF's operations and staff. The union indicates they haven't heard anything about this and what the plan is. The involvement of Youngkin in today's announcement indicates state-level coordination in the federal building takeover. Why? How? I don't even know. The governor's role in the process has not been detailed in the available information, and who knows whether there'll ever be any, or whether there ever was any kind of involvement at all. Maybe it's just Youngkin doing the Trump thing. I heard that the Israelis were getting credit for a great raid. I want to have a great raid. I heard Trump was getting credit for wrecking the federal government. I want to wreck the federal government. Maybe. He's got to start looking for a job soon, too. He's term limited to just 1 term in office, and that's coming to a close. And I guess he's got to put himself in position to run nationally or for a Senate seat, so he's got to try to get Trumpy if that's what he thinks is going to, produce a win for him. All right, let's see. Other things to catch you up on. There's a million different reasons or different directions to go. I thought we were going to spend some more time getting back towards congressional action these days, but the mayoral election in New York has got everybody excited, so we could schedule that for perhaps for tomorrow and spend some time on a few other things. Another trendy item being much talked about on Blue Sky, just like the NSF takeover all of a sudden, is the fact that you can now be refused admission to this country on a tourist visa if they search your phone and find things that say mean stuff or show mean pictures about J.D. Vance. That's a real thing now, which, is a real indicator of fascism. Dublin Live is the outlet I'll turn to for a formal presentation of this story, though I have seen it elsewhere. And the man in question is not Irish, but Irish people are interested in visiting the United States from time to time, too. The man in question is Norwegian, I think. But first I got to get this pop-up out of the way. A man was, quote, refused entry into the U.S. as Border Control catch him with, what, contraband? Drugs? No, a bald J.D. Vance meme. And I'm vaguely aware of this trend of using, who knows what, Photoshop / AI / some combination of the two, to produce pictures with altered appearance, like to make him look ridiculous and goofy, of J.D. Vance. And he looks ridiculous and goofy very much on his own, but that's what makes it so fun to exaggerate it. And the one in question here shows him, I would say they added a couple dozen pounds, rounded his face out a little bit, and then erased his hair. So made him a fat, bald guy, but they got rid of his, mascara look and eyeliner look. And, it's not what he looks like, but it's clearly a manipulated image of him. Okay, funny. That's all. And he had it on his phone. And now the Border Patrol guys are like, you can't come here on vacation because something. We're afraid you're going to talk to people who live in America and you're going to give them your weird Norwegian ideas about not liking J.D. Vance, even though we all have our own homegrown ideas about not liking J.D. Vance. I really don't know where this is going, but that's kind of what makes it so concerning. But also, there's a very funny picture that makes fun of J.D. Vance involved, and I like that. A 21-year-old Norwegian tourist claims, maybe he's making it up, claims he was denied entry to the United States and harassed by ICE agents after they discovered a J.D. Vance meme on his phone. And by the way, it would make it's just a brilliant guerrilla marketing campaign for this meme if I had no intention of visiting the United States, but I'm going to spread the rumor that I tried to get into the United States on a tourist visa and they wouldn't let me in because of this fat, bald J.D. Vance meme. What? Outrageous. Fascism. What's the meme? Oh, look at that. That's funny, too. All right, well, I have to publish that to illustrate the story. Is the story a lie? I don't know. But go for it, as far as I'm concerned. There's no reason to believe it is one. It appears on the level, as far as I can tell. Mads Mikkelsen is the name of the Norwegian in question. He arrived at Newark Airport in New Jersey on June 11th when he was pulled aside by Border Control and placed in a cell, he told Norwegian outlet Nordlys, Nordlys. Mads was traveling to the States to visit friends, first in New York and then in Austin, Texas. And they do try to keep it weird there, so maybe that's what the meme was for. But he suffered harassment and abuse of power at the hands of U.S. immigration authorities. I'd be curious to know what made them pull him out of line in the first place. I felt prejudiced, suspected, and simply humiliated, even then, in front of many other people at the airport. He's from where? I don't know how you pronounce this. Tromsø? The O has the little slash and it makes it look like a zero. And I don't know how you pronounce that. Sorry, Norwegians, but maybe you can send me a pronunciation tip. That's where he's from, and it doesn't impact the rest of the story. They took me into a room with several armed guards where I had to hand over my shoes, and there was no J.D. Vance in his shoes. Mobile phone, that was the problem, and backpack. And that was surprising because the mini J.D. Vance was, in fact, found in his backpack. Of course not. No. Officers quizzed Mads about his visit. That's, I guess, a very Irish usage there. They questioned him about it. They quizzed him about it. All right. What is the name of your first hotel? That's a quiz, I guess. His plans, etc., before adopting a personal line of questioning. They asked direct questions about drug smuggling, terrorist plans, and right-wing extremism, completely without reason, he claimed. They demanded full information about everyone I was going to meet in the U.S., including names, addresses, phone numbers, and what they did for work. Mads' mother was due to meet up with him in a few weeks into his stay, and the pair had planned to travel to several national parks. Well, they're closing all those anyway, or selling them. I had traveled for 12 hours, slept poorly, and was physically and mentally completely exhausted even before they started the questioning, he continued. A strenuous crackdown by U.S. Customs and Border Protection has followed President Donald Trump's return to office, with the service being allowed to search phones. A French scientist was denied entry at the border earlier this year in March after officers unearthed messages criticizing Trump on his phone. I mean, that's a great place for messages criticizing Trump, in my view, but I guess not if you're trying to gain entry as a non-citizen. They threatened me. Mikkelsen goes on to say, they threatened me with a minimum fine of $5,000 or 5 years in prison if I refused to provide the password to my phone. Well, I mean, why not just say, all right, well, you can't come in? Why are you going to keep him there and then fine him and put him in prison if you don't give him the password? That doesn't seem right. But, nothing seems right in this administration. After handing over his password, I'd love to investigate that further. And I'm sure there are good guides out there as to what your rights actually are in that case. And I mean, you may not have very many rights in terms of forcing your way in and being allowed to use your visa, but I don't understand how they can stop you at the border. I can understand how they might say, well, give me your password so we can search your phone, and we're not going to let you in unless you allow us to search your phone. Sure. But if they don't allow you in, then they should deport you back to Norway, not, well, we're also going to put you in jail here for 5 years and fine you. That doesn't seem to make a great deal of sense, but nothing ever does. After handing over his password, Mods was told he would not be allowed to go through with his planned vacation after 2 images were not to the officer's liking. One image was a meme showcasing J.D. Vance with a bald, egg-shaped head. Variations of the image were shared endlessly in March on social media, with the vice president himself posting his own version, which I would say let's put him in jail for 5 years or $5,000 or deport him to a third country, which should be okay now thanks to the Supreme Court. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, and the Kagro in Tromsø. Tromsø is how I'm going to end up pronouncing. I'm going to roll that R a little bit too. I don't know whether they really do that, but Tromsø, the O with the slash in it, is apparently pronounced that way. I went and looked that up. That's where Mods is from. He is a Tromsø native. I hope I've got that right. Maybe they don't even do that with the R's. I wanted to play one of those how to pronounce videos during the break, but they are not designed for use during radio show breaks. And the most common pronunciation guide that comes up, through search engine optimization every time, the how to pronounce series, that somehow somebody is just making these things 24/7. I think they've got everything under the sun, but it takes a minute. First, you got to play, a commercial, and then it takes them a minute to tell you how to pronounce Tromsø. And it's like, thankfully, there were some written pronunciation guides that came up instead. But, they got to fill a minute video, I guess, with this thing. And it's that guy with the French accent. We are looking at today how to say the name of the town in Norway. I didn't actually listen, but this is from experience. How you fill a minute when it should be. There is another series of pronunciation videos that just go straight into it. And I appreciate their forthrightness, but still you got to sit through a 30-second video. So somebody needs to work on that. Anyway, back over to the story here. Is there more? Why not? I have a problem not finishing stories if there's more information presented to me, but not all of it is always all that interesting. And you never know where it'll lead you. Anyway, the other picture that was a problem showed Mods with a wooden pipe, which he had made years prior. Both pictures had been automatically saved to my camera roll from a chat app, but I really didn't think that these innocent pictures would put a stop to my entry into the country. Maybe they thought he was smoking drugs in the wooden pipe. And maybe he was. I don't know. But I guess that's the level of to which they're descending in this country and screening people. Mods told Nordlys, the outlet in Norway, he tried to explain the images as being harmless and meant as jokes, but the immigration authorities ignored his pleas. His claims that he was then strip searched, forced to give blood samples, a facial scan, and fingerprints. That's rather disturbing all at once. But once you find yourself in their custody, I could see them trying to force that out of you. I don't think it's fair or right, but we should stay on top of these things and hear the horror stories. Later, I was taken back in and the situation got even worse. I was pushed up against the wall and later strip searched with a lot of force. Oh boy, they were incredibly harsh and used physical force the whole time. He claimed, I felt completely devastated and broke down and was close to crying several times. I was on the verge of panic. It felt like I was a terrorist suspect where I was sitting. I tried to pull myself together several times, but in the end, I just wanted to get home again, and I can't blame him for that. The Norwegian adds that he was placed in a cell for a further 5 hours, refused food or water, that is, it was refused to him, I'm sure, and placed on a plane back to Oslo the same day that he arrived for the holiday of a lifetime. Well, now you got that was a thing of a lifetime, too. I don't feel there's any point in contacting the State Department, nor do I think they have any power against such a powerful and strict country as the United States, Mods conceded, and I don't know whether he means the Norwegian State Department, but there's not much power in the United States State Department to do anything or to help either. Matthias Rongved, a spokesperson at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Norway, presumably, has warned fellow Norwegians that it is their duty to be clued up on U.S. regulations before entering the country. Most trips to the U.S. go without any particular problems, he said. And this is the sort of trip that likewise should in the past have gone without any problems. Entry regulations can change at short notice, and it's the traveler's responsibility to have valid documents, he had those, and be familiar with the current entry regulations. But that's not a regulation. That's just a bunch of guys who don't like you. That's the problem with it. It is the immigration authorities upon arrival who decide whether you are rejected at the border. Norwegian authorities cannot intervene in this decision. It's also not necessarily the case that we receive a message either from other countries' borders authorities or the Norwegian traveler if the person in question is not allowed to enter a country. So, yeah, that's problematic in general. And, it's not like he came in with a T-shirt with a J.D. Vance denigration message, although that's supposed to be okay too. But at least they went looking for a reason to give this guy a problem, and I don't know how or why they decided to do that. It may just have been at random, and you could probably, if you're allowed to demand everybody's phones, you could refuse just about anybody entry based on something, especially if you're willing to make stuff up about, well, I saw a picture of you with a pipe, therefore drugs. Well, no, that's not the way it actually works. All right, so let's see. There's still more about, well, I'll save the big, beautiful bill and the trouble that it's in and the problems it's having with the parliamentarian, as expected. I don't know why people thought this wouldn't happen. I think, though, they thought they would ignore the parliamentarians. They didn't pay a great deal of attention to it, but and they may yet, in the end, do that. But instead, we'll concentrate on a couple of other stories still out there and floating around, and maybe we'll make tomorrow the Congressional Action Day. Here's more news from the dodgy front. Big Balls is out. Balls out, as they say in certain corners. Or, I don't know what else they said. But the guy known as Big Balls has left the government, and it's not entirely clear from this entry at Wired, although they do the best job of covering all this stuff, why he's gone. I don't know if he was kicked out, fired, or said, I don't want to stay anymore if Elon isn't around, or maybe found himself a little less powerful, since a lot of these guys, their leverage relied on being able to threaten people with, don't make me, if you want me to call Elon, I'll call Elon, I'll get him on the phone, and then you'll be sorry, and now you can't do that anymore. Big Balls no longer works for the U.S. government, says Wired, the technologist, as they call him, Edward Korestein, a key operative in Elon Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency, who's gone by the name Big Balls online, as you know, has resigned. The White House tells Wired, which is amazing, because why the F do they care? Edward, who's writing here? Where's the byline? There we are. Jake LaHutte, McKenna Kelly, Victoria Elliott, and Zoe Schiffer, all sharing the byline on this piece. Edward Big Balls Korestein, one of the first technologists hired as part of Elon Musk's so-called Dodgy, is no longer working for the federal government, according to multiple sources, I guess including the White House. Edward Korestein resigned yesterday, a White House official tells Wired. Why? And why did it come up? Korestein received full-time employment status at the GSA late last month, as reported by Wired, and it seems like an extraordinary waste of time to go through all that paperwork and make him a permanent employee of the GSA, only to, in the end, have him walk out anyway. And it makes me think of all the people who found themselves terminated early on by Dodgy, some of whom have been at least reinstated by courts, if not, in fact, de jure, I guess, reinstatement, if not de facto reinstatement. But I think of all the people who were terminated, who were in their probationary period. That comes up in this story too, but who have spent years trying to land that job. And just to think about this guy getting one of those jobs and just handed to him, of course, and then saying, screw it, I'm leaving. It's a shame, but I'm glad he's gone, I guess. Anyway, as of Tuesday afternoon, his Google Workspace account with the GSA, General Services Administration, was no longer active. According to a source with direct knowledge, his name also no longer appears on a White House contact list of current Dodgy employees on the federal payroll maintained by a senior administration official, the officials said. In May, Korestein appeared to be attending regular meetings with departments and agencies, including a May 5th meeting with the Commerce Department to discuss Trump's Golden Visa program, a May 15th meeting to discuss implementing the Dodgy agenda at the military, perfect, and a May 22nd meeting with the Treasury Department to discuss taking home bars of gold, probably from Fort Knox. He was listed on a report regarding the GSA workforce on June 10th. That report comes out once a month. Previously, Korestein was one of a handful of Dodgy-affiliated staffers who were occasionally seen at GSA headquarters in Washington, D.C. He worked from the 6th floor of the office, which was cordoned off for employees affiliated with Dodgy and the agency's leadership team. Regular, yucky people who work at GSA were not allowed near them. The GSA and Korestein did not immediately respond to requests for comment from Wired. When Musk exited government in an official capacity last month, Dodgy's future was uncertain. Musk's top lieutenant, Steve Davis, president of the Boring Company. Which company? We have the quote here. Boring! Right, exactly. Don't forget how it's pronounced. With another, that's another Musk company, of course, in case you didn't remember. He also announced, Steve Davis, that he would leave Dodgy with Musk's. Then one of the guys we spent some time on during the break, Sahil Lavinia. Remember him? A former Dodgy member who Wired first identified as the Department of Veterans Affairs, says, I have heard since Elon and Steve had supposedly departed, they've terminated a lot of those that got hired. That might include Big Balls. I don't know. So there's a good chance that a lot of those people were going to end up getting fired anyway. So, the leopard ate your face, but, maybe they don't care. Korestein, according to Lavinia, was one of a small group of technologists who were highly trusted within Dodgy, well, at least by Musk, not by the rest of us, and deployed across multiple federal agencies and were given multiple federal laptops. The core group of pre-inauguration engineers joked about how many laptops they had. It was almost like a competition in the sense to have 7 or 8 different laptops that they would run around with, says Lavinia. And I don't know whether each laptop was, well, this is if you're doing work in this agency and this one is for the other agency. But remember, this is the Department of Government Efficiency. Couldn't they get that down to one laptop? During his time in government, a period in which Dodgy sought to dismantle large parts of the federal bureaucracy, obtained direct access to sensitive federal payment systems, and worked to join siloed systems together to enable surveillance of people in the U.S. Korstein appeared at the GSA, the Office of Personnel Management, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, right, and the Department of Education, and, one more, the Small Business Administration. Korstein, of course, got the handle, or went by the handle Big Balls online. He's 19 years old. He may have been turned 20 recently. I don't know what his birthday is, but okay. High school graduate, yay, who worked at Neuralink, one of the other Musk companies, for several months, and founded a company allegedly called Tesla.sexy LLC in 2021. And we got a little explanation of the sexy part at one point, too. That's referring to an acronym, I guess that you could say, made up of the different model identifiers of Teslas that were on the market. The Model S, the Model 3, which substitutes for an E in this case, Model X, and the Model Y. And so it does, in fact, spell sexy. The company, Tesla.sexy, to the extent that it's a company at all, owns several domains, including 2 registered in Russia, one of which is an AI Discord bot. He also briefly worked for a company founded by reformed black hat hackers called the Path Network, and a Telegram handle associated with Korstein appears to have solicited a distributed denial of service attack. So, we heard all that about him in the beginning. But just as a reminder, that's kind of the background of the guy. He's out, and I guess we'll have to await more details on whether he was kicked out, forced out, given the option to leave, fired, eaten by a leopard, or what. But you won't have big balls to kick around anymore unless, of course, you want to. So let's see, other stories that are important and of interest that we might want to shoehorn in. Let's see, yesterday's discussion of the DVD Supreme Court case, the Department of Homeland Security versus DVD, and the shadow docket treatment of this. One of the comments on it, and linking to the Steve Vladek story that we shared yesterday, comes from Jamel Bowie, who always finds a way to express the point that much better than everybody else. And I grabbed this one. One way to make sense of the position of Republicans on the Supreme Court. And remember, we don't know whether it was 5 of them or 6 of them because they didn't write an opinion or sign it in this thing. But that they basically said, well, not only are we not giving you our opinion and not explaining ourselves, but they did a thing which really just, should not have been done. It doesn't make any sense for them to have granted the government's request here, given that the government has been the one deceiving everybody in everywhere else this case has been handled. But one way to make sense of the position of the Republicans on the Supreme Court is that they don't believe there is such a thing as a legitimate objection to the actions of a Republican president, no matter how deranged, depraved, or anti-constitutional. So it's not that their position makes any sense in context of, previous precedent. It's just, well, the answer is, I don't know what you're asking for, but if it's not what President Trump wants or a Republican president wants, then you're not going to get it. Well, how can that be? You're not going to be able to justify that logically in every case. All right, well, in those cases where we cannot justify it logically, we'll simply say the decision is you have to do this. Why? I don't have to tell you why, and you shouldn't look for a reason. So Jamel may have it right there on that front. Let's see. A couple of other things that, this is part of the theme we'll save for tomorrow, running down what's happening with the reconciliation bill, the one big beautiful bill. But let's see. We've got information about Emil Bove and what's going on over there, and that seems like an extremely important one. And we have information let's see. Why don't we save? We'll do that one, I guess. But I have a Don Moynihan Substack entry that is about a different angle of what's going on over in Congress. But if we make tomorrow a Congress day, then perhaps we can squeeze it in there. All right. In that case, we'll go over to the New York Times report that I referenced yesterday but didn't read, but is an extremely important point, especially with Emil Bove facing his confirmation hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee today. Maybe even right now. For all I know, we'll see what they have to say. Justice Department leaders suggested violating court orders, usually not great for your nomination, according to a whistleblower here, Emil Bove III, and I would probably guess that Emil Bove II and Emil Bove I weren't great guys either, but I don't know. I'm not certain. And we don't want to visit the sins of the son or the grandson on the rest of them, just as we're not supposed to do it the other way around. But I don't know where he learned. I don't know where he was raised in a barn, but maybe yes. Emil Bove III, a Trump judicial nominee now, voiced his intent to disobey court orders as others stonewalled and misled judges, according to a complaint. And you might wonder why he wants to be one based on that. But there are other things to wonder that are more important. Devlin Barrett reported all of this on Tuesday, which was yesterday. A senior Justice Department official, that's, believe it or not, Emil Bove III, told subordinates he was willing to ignore court orders to fulfill the president's aggressive deportation campaign, according to a whistleblower complaint by a department lawyer who has since been fired, which is supposed to be a problem when you're an official whistleblower. The account by the dismissed lawyer, Erez Ruveni, and we mentioned Mr. Ruveni's last name yesterday in a clip we read from, I don't know, we probably grabbed it from Marcy Wheeler, paints a disturbing portrait of his final 3 weeks on the front lines of the Trump administration's legal efforts to ship immigrants overseas, often with little notice or recourse. And it's getting worse, of course, thanks to the DVD case. Now they can also swap the countries that they're thinking of deporting you to at the last minute without telling you, and you do no more process on that. In Mr. Ruveni's telling, Mr. Bove discussed disregarding court orders, adding an expletive for emphasis, and other. We know which one it is, but I like to say, if you're going to just leave it at that, it's an expletive. Well, I'm going to go with MFer. That's the expletive I like to imagine people saying, but it's really just the F. Anyway, ignore court orders, tell judges to F off, essentially, and other top law enforcement officials showed themselves ready to stonewall judges or lie to them in order to get their way. Mr. Ruveni's account, which was obtained by the New York Times, was filed to lawmakers and the Justice Department Inspector General on Tuesday, one day before Bove is scheduled to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee for a nomination to the Federal Appeals Court. Mr. Ruveni was a career lawyer at the department for nearly 15 years until April, when he expressed concern in federal court that the administration had mistakenly deported a migrant to a mega prison in El Salvador. You remember who that might be? And I think we're talking about Mr. Garcia here. And I guess he was the lawyer, Ruveni was, who basically had to admit in court, this was done mistakenly, but there may be nothing we can do about it now, but it was in fact an error, and that infuriated the powers that be, I guess. So Mr. Ruveni was put on administrative leave a day later and ultimately fired. In a statement, Harrison Fields, a White House spokesman, praised Mr. Bove as, quote, an incredibly talented legal mind and a staunch defender of the U.S. Constitution who will make an excellent circuit court judge. That's boilerplate stuff, but it's problematic. He's not an incredibly talented legal mind. An incredibly talented legal mind would be the kind of person who, even if he was working for the forces of evil, was confronted with a legal problem everybody says is intractable and designs a way around it that logic applies to and brings United States Supreme Court justices around to that position, possibly establishing entirely new precedent and overturning previous precedent by sheer force of will, by the power of the argument. But a person who just says, well, we'll lie and cheat and steal and rely on members of the Supreme Court who don't mind lying, cheating, and stealing themselves when it comes to upholding the Republican agenda, that's not a legal mind. That's just, a person who understands, oh, well, if I act in corrupt fashion, I will be met in the middle by the requisite number of Supreme Court justices and other federal judges who will likewise act in a corrupt manner. And so that's not legal reasoning. That's just understanding that there are people you can manipulate and who are willing to be manipulated and then doing it. But it's happening in a legal context. And he is supposedly a trained lawyer as well. So everybody just sort of assumes that this was brilliant legal work as opposed to, going in. I don't know whether, but if this isn't what he's accused of doing, but if you were to go in and say, well, Judge, it's not that we have a great argument. It's that I will break your effing legs if you don't rule this way, and I'll be pardoned for it, and you better believe it. And then they do. That's not brilliant legal work. You see what I mean? All right. It's not what he's accused of doing, but it's an analogy to what he's accused of doing. You'll find yourself in trouble. You'll find yourself either impeached from the bench or under attack by Trump forces or whatever it is, or your family will lose business opportunities, whatever it is that they can threaten them with. If you do that, that's not being a talented legal mind. Or a staunch defender of the United States Constitution, of course. Mr. Bove's boss, Todd Blanche, called Mr. Ravani's description of events falsehoods purportedly made by a disgruntled former employee and then leaked to the press in violation of ethical obligations. No, filed through established legal methodologies as a whistleblower, not violation of ethical obligations. Mr. Blanche denounced this article as a, quote, false hit piece a day before the confirmation hearing, criticizing the Times for publishing it. The claims about the Department of Justice leadership are utterly false, he said in a statement. The filing, however, suggests a copious trail of emails, texts, and phone records that would support Mr. Ravani's version of events. Yes. It notes that he was recently promoted, instead of disgruntled former employee, recently promoted, and had diligently defended controversial immigration policies of the first Trump administration. Until now, Mr. Ravani had stayed silent about the circumstances of his departure. A 27-page account filed by his lawyers at the Government Accountability Project, Dana Gold and Andrea Meza, the two lawyers, offer a host of new details and allegations about the inner workings of the Justice Department under Mr. Trump. Let's hear about it. It adds that Mr. Ravani will continue to tell the truth in defense of the rule of law. That's not part of what happened there. But in March and early April, the filing states, Mr. Ravani became aware of the plans of DOJ leadership to resist court orders that would impede potentially illegal efforts, that's what they're supposed to do, to deport non-citizens, and further became aware of the details to execute those plans, the plans to resist court orders. Top officials at the Justice Department and the White House sought to defy federal court orders. How? Through lack of candor, deliberate delay, and disinformation, his account states. Discouraging clients from engaging in illegal conduct is an important part of the role of a lawyer, the account says. In other words, basically, Ravani is saying the ethical lawyer in this situation says, no, I won't help facilitate defying court orders through lack of candor, deliberate delay, and disinformation. I'm complying with my ethical obligations by filing a formal whistleblower complaint about it. Todd Blanche says, trying to actually uphold the standards of the legal profession is the actual ethical breach in this case. It's like, aren't you guys the real racists? Well, anyway, discouraging clients from engaging in illegal conduct is an important part of the role of the lawyer. Mr. Ravani tried to do so and was thwarted, threatened, fired, and publicly disparaged for both doing his job and telling the truth to the court. A pivotal meeting occurred on March 14th when Mr. Bove, a senior official in the Deputy Attorney General's office, spoke bluntly about the administration's plans. He informed his subordinates that Mr. Trump would soon invoke the Alien Enemies Act to rapidly fly a group of immigrants out of the country that weekend. Two other officials in that office, James McHenry and Paul Perkins, were in attendance, as well as Mr. Rouhani's supervisors, Drew Ensign and August Flenche. I've surely mangled that name, according to the whistleblower document. And Mr. Bove at this point stressed to all in attendance that the planes needed to take off no matter what. Literally, no matter what, according to Mr. Rouhani's account. Mr. Bove then broached the possibility that a court order would enjoin those removals before they could be effectuated. Bove stated the DOJ would need to consider telling the courts, F you, and ignore any such order. According to the account, Mr. Rouhani perceived that others in the room looked stunned. Yes, and he observed awkward, nervous glances among people in the room. Silence overtook the room. Mr. Rouhani and others were quickly ushered out of the room, the account says. It continues, notwithstanding Bove's directive, Mr. Rouhani left the meeting understanding that DOJ would tell DHS to follow all court orders. As far as Mr. Rouhani knew, no one in DOJ leadership in any administration had ever suggested that the Department of Justice could blatantly ignore court orders, especially with an expletive, his account states. Mr. Rouhani was in disbelief. Well, too bad, because it happened. Rouhani's account does not list Blanche as one of the people present at the meetings, but the Deputy Attorney General said in a written statement that he was there, and at no time did anyone suggest a court order should not be followed. So they definitely don't want that to be the record, because that would be embarrassing. They do recognize that that's wrong and embarrassing, but Rouhani's account highlights the tensions that have been roiling the Justice Department for months, where many current and former career lawyers have come to fear that the department's political leaders, chosen by Trump, are systematically trying to undermine the integrity of their work. And they are. It's well-founded, these complaints. There's much more to it. I'm going to read it once I get off the air here. We'll see if there's more that we can extract and bring you tomorrow. Tomorrow being Thursday, Greg Dworkin returns with us, and perhaps we'll turn our attention not only back to the New York mayoral race, but to what's happening in Congress.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, that story we just ended with needs more attention, but good news, it headlines Justice Putnam's lineup for today's West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, along with the news that Stephen Miller's push to have the FBI assist in the Trump administration's ethnic cleansing has been put on ice, by which I hope it means Stephen Miller has been put on ice, but we'll see. Stay tuned.